Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Patterson and Michael Remis.
Hey now, welcome to a wonderful Thursday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Michael Remis here in the host chair for Hustler. Super pumped to be here. A lot to get to today. Some big announcements. The CFL has a new broadcast deal. Carolina Hurricanes taking a 3-1 lead and obliterating Montreal at the Bell Center last night. Canada winning over USA at the Worlds. Mark Scheifele recording 2 assists, advancing to the semifinal. Connor Hrabchak's going to join me in a second. Lots to get to. We've got some wonderful guests today. Tait of BlueBombers.com. The final preseason game goes tomorrow. The depth chart just got released. We'll be getting into the key, preseason training camp storylines around the Bombers and outlook for the season. And Brandon Rewucki, Skates and Plates podcast, some off-season Jets topics and NHL discussion. Got to give a shout-out before we bring in Connor to our sponsors, Tri-Hospital Dream Lottery, Clean Line, Manitoba Battery, Rollies Transfer, Princess Auto, Chud's Power Sports, St. Vital Dental, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, Winnipeg Gold Eyes. Just talked about that $2 menu on Tuesdays. They'll be back next week. Travel Manitoba, Assiniboia Downs, Aikens Lake. That's where Hustler is right now. Breezy Bend, Little Brown Jug, and Cool Bet. And before I bring in Connor Hrabchak, I do have to share the news that the NHL Alumni Association just announced that Claude Lemieux passed away at age 60. Shocking, considering his age 60, and he was just at the Canadiens playoff game lifting the torch. And he won 4 Stanley Cups with 3 different teams, New Jersey, Montreal, and Colorado. Won the Conn Smythe Trophy, and a huge playoff performer. Hard not to watch playoff hockey and rivalry hockey without thinking of Claude Lemieux. And reaction throughout the hockey world coming in. I did see Darren McCarty on X, who he feuded with as a member of the Avalanche, just put out the broken heart emoji. And Gary Bettman just released a statement saying they send our deepest condolences to Claude's wife, Deborah, and his 4 children, Brendan, who played with the Winnipeg Jets organization, Claudia, Michael, and Christopher. So again, very stunned today to hear the news about Claude Lemieux. But let's bring in Connor Hrabchak, as a lot of topics to get to here, Connor, as the weather, it's a scorcher out there.
Yeah, we're finally getting that weather. I saw it as a yellow warning for heat today. So we've done a full 180 from, I think, early last week, where it was too cold. Now it's arguably too hot with the heat warning, but I'll take it. I don't mind the heat. But just before we get into the show, I want to share the thoughts that you shared there. Shocked to hear the passing of Claude Lemieux. You mentioned the statement from Gary Bettman there. As part of that statement, there's a paragraph in there that says, overall, his teams reached the Stanley Cup playoffs in 15 straight seasons. His 234 postseason games played ranked 6th in NHL history, and his 80 career playoff goals ranked 9th. And he was a player agent in the last couple of years here. And shocking to know that he was raising and holding the torch as a part of the Montreal Canadiens pregame ceremony for Game 3 of the series that they're in right now. Shocking news, and my condolences go out to that family. Terrible.
Yeah. Most recently, a player agent, and he was, saw him here in Winnipeg watching his son play and represented Canada with the World Under-20s and, other international competition. So that was a stunner. I know anyone who watched hockey in the 90s or 80s, early 2000s has memories of watching Claude Lemieux play. NHL legend, passed away at 60. But Connor, moving on, I woke up this morning to the news, the CFL announcing a new media rights deal beginning in 2027. And according to Dan Ralph, this 6-year deal worth $500 million. And Dave Naylor estimating the revenue per team jumps about from $50 million a year to 84. Annual media revenue jumps from $50 million a year to $84 million a year for the league. And the most notable part of this is, one, games staying on TSN, Friday Night Football and Thursday Night Football. The Grey Cup still on TSN. It did stream this past year on Crave and CTV. But we were wondering if this was going to happen. We've seen it in the United States and the NFL, streaming, taking over, and it's DAZN, spelt D-A-Z-N. I call it DAZN. They've got the rights to Saturday night games and Saturday night playoff games in the first two rounds, as well international streaming rights outside Canada, USA. So if you want to see the CFL game in the Saturday night window starting next season, you will need a subscription to DAZN, available wherever you get streaming. One other factor that was notable in this partnership with YouTube, I'm not really sure what this means, but possible creator collaborations. Hey, CFL, we're creators on YouTube, but behind the scenes content, original programming, a lot of the teams putting out some great stuff, combine coverage, archives, which I think we need, highlights, which are great for YouTube. I know my son is watching like all the NHL channel highlights every morning of the playoffs and preseason games because of the CFL Plus has been a disaster, I think. So it's on YouTube, easier to find. So YouTube involved, but primarily TSN and Bell, plus DAZN getting Saturday night football on the streamer. Connor, your thoughts on this new CFL deal?
Yeah, I understand a lot of the reaction you're seeing online where fans are obviously unhappy that they're going to have to pay another subscription service, right? We pay for Prime to watch some extra hockey in Canada when the Winnipeg Jets had 4 games on Prime this year. I recently watched a Toronto Blue Jays game on Apple. So you need Apple to watch some MLB games. Sometimes the Apple product just picks it up. In the States, that's really gotten out of hand in the States where you need Peacock to watch like NFL and NBA as well. And now DAZN is getting in for CFL. Now, I understand the concern. Like you open up DAZN and take a look at the price of what it is. And it looks like, I believe it's $24 a month or $30 a month. And you're thinking like, wow, $30 a month. And maybe you don't care about the other things DAZN offers. $30 a month for 4 CFL games. Like that's a lot. And it's another subscription service. And so for me, DAZN also has NFL. You know, they have NFL Red Zone. They have NFL Game Pass. So I pay for it anyways. This doesn't really change anything for me. I'm still going to buy DAZN for the NFL purposes. Now I'm just getting more out of my subscription, if you will. But one thing that I don't think is disputable is that this is fantastic for the league. We can debate, you know, for the fans and the subscription services, and I'm a part of that. Absolutely. It's not great, but when you look at the league and you bring up the revenue numbers that you were bringing up, Remo, and how this will help all of the teams. Again, here in Winnipeg, we are the gold standard, but not the normal in terms of how CFL teams are doing across the league. Like a lot of teams are losing money. Here in Winnipeg, yeah, they're turning, you know, $12 million profits when they host the Grey Cup and stuff like that and selling out every night. But that's not the case in other markets. So a strong TV deal, which this is very, very helpful for the Canadian Football League. And it will help them if they want to expand. It'll be more interesting for people to invest in ownership and expand in the CFL. So from that sense, the CFL, they should be popping champagne bottles over at their office. Like I do think this is good for the Canadian Football League. I do also feel with the fans that are saying, well, another subscription, you know, $30 a month to watch Canadian Football League Saturday night games. I get that. And if anyone from DAZN is watching, and Remis, you can let me know if this is a good idea or not. Feel free to use this idea for free, DAZN. You don't even have to credit me. Create a bit of a CFL exclusive package for people who don't care about the NFL. They don't want NFL Red Zone. They don't care about the football and the UFC and all the other stuff that are offered on DAZN, the Champions League, the Premier League, all that stuff. They don't want to watch any of that. They just want to watch the CFL. Introduce a package where it's only CFL. I think that would be very smart. If you get creative with season ticket holders get DAZN half off so they can watch these Saturday night games, I think that would be great. If DAZN can find a way to get creative, to get people to subscribe, not at the price of $30 a month, I think this can work. But I have to admit, it's a high, steep price. But again, it all comes with it's good for the league. So the salary cap will boom. Teams will be better off financially. There's a higher chance of expansion with a stronger TV deal. Like all of that stuff has to be said. And I think that that's true. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Remo. But for the fans, I obviously understand, another subscription, that's painful.
We have the poll out right now. Will you pay DAZN $24.99 a month for Saturday CFL games? Vote in the poll. We'll go over it later on. And if you are looking to subscribe, they have NFL Game Pass, includes Red Zone, the games UEFA Champions League, Europa League, Bundesliga, some UFC, and there's different tiers of subscribing. I think, as you said, as it's structured right now, saying, hey, pay $25 for 4 CFL games, I think that's a tough sell when I can subscribe to TSN for $30 a month and get, 3 times 4 games, so the 12 CFL games, but also you're getting Jets here, you're getting, World Juniors, the golf, NFL is on TSN as well. We're pretty lucky that in Canada that Bell has the rights for all the NFL games, and it's not fragmented like it is in the United States, a lot easier. So I'm curious how this is going to work out. I think it's easy to say, this is great for the CFL. They're getting a lot of money, but at what cost? And I think it's clear that they had the expanded playoffs, so they could sell this. And I think it's also easier to say now with the way the playoffs is, who cares if I miss a Saturday game? It doesn't matter.
It's not like they're getting eliminated. Yeah.
Every team's making the playoffs. It doesn't matter. And if the one Saturday game is the Page playoff game, you're like, well, if my team loses, they still play next week. Who cares?
On TSN. So it'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be So I'm curious how this is going to work out for them. We saw MLS moved all their games to Apple behind, you had to pay for Apple TV, then pay for MLS. And I don't think people were willing to do that. CFL is a niche league. It's on in the summer. Are fans going to pay? I guess that's not the CFL's problem. They got the money from DAZN. So I'm curious how this is going to work out. And maybe there are packages for season ticket holders. Say, hey, subscribe, or give you a deal. Or you could get CFL only. Is there a la carte games? Like maybe people would pay $10 a month to watch the 4 games.
And again, some people, I subscribe to DAZN because I feel it's worth it for NFL Red Zone and NFL Game Pass. The San Francisco 49ers are my favorite team. I can't watch them without DAZN in Canada. They're not on cable. TSN is not picking up Niners games on the West Coast. So I pay for it. I pay for Red Zone. I watch Red Zone. I play fantasy football, all that stuff. So I'm still going to buy this. And people my age who like the NFL, they all have DAZN too for the same reasons that I just mentioned. But the hardcore CFL fans that only care about the CFL and have been season ticket holders for decades and watch every game on TSN and love the league, they might not deem it, worthy to pay $30 a month for 4 games. And those 4 games a month that you're getting, which is every Saturday night at 6:00 Central, I mean, one of them could be Edmonton versus Toronto, and you're at the lake anyways, so you're not watching. So that's one game that you're missing, and you're already paying $30 a month. If what I am prepared for, Remo, is for the Bombers and the Riders to be playing essentially every single Saturday night next season. Not every single, but a lot of the time. I think if they want people to get the DAZN subscriptions, they're going to put the 2 biggest markets in this Saturday slot. So I looked this year, the Bombers only have 2 Saturday 6:00 games. The Banjo Bowl is on a Saturday, but it's at 3. I don't think that would be a part of the DAZN package.
Not this year. Wait till it's next year at 6 o'clock.
They'll
Connor.
move it to 6.
Wait till they move it next year. Wait till they.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. They know who the biggest fan bases are and who's most likely
Bombers
to subscribe.
and Riders are going to be on there quite
Although
a
I'm
bit.
sure TSN would probably have a say, hey, we want this game. It's going to be a big draw. But that's going to be one of the first things we look at as far as the schedule goes. And Schnitzy says, can you just pay monthly? Yes. And there was a question here from Remio. Says, I thought DAZN was for just outside Canada and USA. So every game of outside Canada, USA available on DAZN, but Saturday night games starting next season, exclusive streaming only. So I'm curious, one thing that was interesting actually about it, they're going to be producing their own broadcast, their own commentators. It's going to have a different look.
Panel.
And I'm curious, and I will say my experience with DAZN, extremely negative. This goes back 9 years when they took over NFL, the product wasn't usable. The quality wasn't there. And they'd blame you for your internet. It was not a user problem. They were not able to provide the streaming service. Fans revolted. And the Sunday Ticket went back to cable. And I believe it still is on cable, even after they announced the exclusive rights. So they don't have a great history with football in Canada. I think it's okay now. I've heard that it's extremely delayed. So when you're following online or following box scores for fantasy, you're gonna get it spoiled for you all the time. So I'm curious about the quality of the broadcast, how the app is gonna work. There's gonna be issues, something to watch for next season. We'll talk more football coming up with Ed Tait, but we got to talk about this hockey. Yeah. Last night, Carolina laying the smackdown on Montreal. Montreal, looked like it was still overtime of game 3. Soft on the puck, a lot of giveaways. Carolina absolutely relentless. And in about, 2 or so minutes, Connor, they scored 3 quick goals, 2:47, the second fastest 3-goal burst in Carolina franchise playoff history. Aho, Stahl, and Stankoven getting them on the board. Freddie Anderson with the shutout. Montreal looked like a team that had just, played 2 Game 7 series, winning on the road, could not muster anything offensively. And Carolina, with the shutout, now leading 3-1, looking primed for a return to the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 2006.
Yeah, 1 win away, and that was a big one last night for Montreal, as we noted going into it, going down 3-1, and now the series goes back to Carolina for Game 5, not a spot you want to be in, but again, Carolina just completely dominated that game, and time of possession and shot attempts and whatever metric you want to look at, goals. They completely dominated that game. It was impressive to watch, and Frederik Andersen, you mentioned him, 11-1 in the playoffs, 6-0 on the road. Their one loss came to Montreal in Game 1. He's got 5 shutouts in the playoffs now. That is the franchise record for the Carolina Hurricanes, passing Cam Ward. So impressive stuff from Frederik Andersen. But, the story isn't necessarily the goaltending. He's been great for sure, Andersen, but this team's superpower is that defensive structure. Montreal just had nothing in terms of chances, middle of the ice, shots on goal, completely smothering by the Carolina Hurricanes. And last night, the shots on goal were 19-3 in the third period. So you had Montreal pressing, trailing that game, trying to get more. They just couldn't. Carolina had the puck the whole time. And through 4 games in this Eastern Conference Finals now, the shots on goal are 136-65 in Carolina's favor. That is incredibly lopsided so far in this series. Obviously, Game 1, Montreal came out guns a-blazing. How much of that was rust for Carolina? Given what we've seen in the 3 games that have followed, I know 2 of them went to overtime, but if you watch the games, Carolina felt pretty in control of those ones. Safe to say that first game was rust on Carolina's part, and they look rested. They look like a wagon, and it looks like, we're 1 win away from a Vegas-Carolina final of 2 teams that have just completely smothered their opponents in their respective conference finals series. So impressive performance on the road last night by Carolina for sure.
Looking at the deserve to win-o-meter on Money Puck, I don't know if a playoff game has ever been this lopsided. 90.9% chance for Carolina on the deserve to win-o-meter. And we talked yesterday with Pat Gregoire. I had to rub him saying Mitch Marner in the playoffs a year after leaving the Maple Leafs. How about Nikolai Ehlers? 2 assists yesterday, hitting the crossbar on the empty netter. Some of us had him in fantasy leagues, and it cost us. Thanks, Nikolai. But could see him in the Stanley Cup final 1 year after leaving Winnipeg. What a story. And if it is Carolina versus Vegas, Connor, whether it's Mark Stone or Seth Jarvis, the Stanley Cup will be in Winnipeg this summer.
True. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. There you go. And yeah, Mark Stone was such a force for Vegas in that series. But last night, again, Nikolai Ehlers, great for Carolina. But it's just, he's not the story. They're such a team effort team. Like they're rolling every line. Every defense pair that goes out there is winning their minutes. Their goalie is perfect. Shutouts. They look like an absolute wagon from really top to bottom. They're really impressing so far. So if this ends up being Vegas, Carolina, I know I saw some look ahead lines for the finals, and we had Pat on yesterday. I'm interested to see what the Stanley Cup final would be in terms of odds for Carolina or Vegas. Carolina is the favorite to win the Stanley Cup. They haven't even moved on yet. But you have to think they'll be a favorite. But how big of a favorite will they be in the Stanley Cup finals? They'll have home ice. They had more points in the regular season than Vegas did. And they look, outside of game 1 against Montreal, they've looked unbeatable this entire playoff. So it's been pretty impressive to watch.
You have 2 conference finals here. And the conference final is supposed to be the best of the best. Like NFL, AFC, NFC championship are basically like a second Super Bowl. You have the best games. How much should we blame the playoff format that these conference finals have been garbage? You had a sweep, Vegas, Colorado, and this series seems like Montreal is in a different planet than Carolina.
If you would have told me the conference finals would have been a sweep, I wouldn't have predicted it would have been Vegas. To be fair, and there's something to be said about the playoff format that Colorado was beat up maybe coming out of their series, even though they only played 9 games in the first 2 rounds. But I don't know. I do feel this way, that the conference finals are never really my favorite round. Like, I don't go into the Stanley Cup playoffs thinking, wow, I can't wait for the 3rd round. I will stand and plant my flag that the 2nd round of the Stanley Cup playoffs is by far the best round. You have the best collection of teams. You have 2 games a night if you're watching. And the matchups are great, like Colorado, Minnesota, or Buffalo, Montreal, right? And now, I guess Carolina and Vegas are just too good that they're making it boring. There's no intrigue, that they're just rolling. But yeah, I'm always here for ragging on the playoff format in any way, shape, or form. So I'll get on board with that take, Remo.
Yeah, I would say that. But Colorado, I never saw them getting swept. But did they get swept because they had this tougher road? We've been saying how good the Central is, and for how many years in a row now we say, oh, Dallas is so good, Colorado is so good, the Jets. You haven't had a team from the Central win the Western Conference final here. Now Edmonton, certainly something to say about that, but
right,
anytime we can rag on the playoff bracket, I think I'm going to.
For sure.
As far as one thing that's interesting for Carolina on their side, I think Vegas, we know the Conn Smythe candidates. Mitch Marner 1, Eichel 2. I think Carter Hart making a case. But Carolina, I had Freddie Anderson on top after the first 2 rounds. Hasn't really had to do a lot here, even though we got the shutout yesterday. What's your take on the Carolina Conn Smythe situation?
Oh, man. I think it is Frederik Andersen, just because, I do think if Freddie Andersen got the Conn Smythe, it would come with the understanding from all of us that it's kind of a team award in a sense. Like these shutouts, he's playing great. He's making big saves for sure. But at the same time, Montreal is finding it tough to get to 15 shots every night. So I don't know, do you give it to like Keandre Miller for the shot suppression. Like, I don't know what the other thought process would be there. Their point leaders are Taylor Hall and Jackson Blake at 13 points each. And then third is Logan Stankoven at 9 points. So you could give it to one of Hall or Blake, but given the fact that Frederik Andersen has 5 shutouts, he's already broken the record. If Carolina goes on and wins the cup and has a few dominant performances in the final in terms of defense, and Freddie Andersen gets another couple of shutouts, maybe 2 in the finals, I think there's no way you don't give it to the goalie of the team that's just shutting everyone out and playing this lockdown defensive style. No, he's not out there, suppressing the shots, but the ones that are coming through, he's stopping them all. So I think it's him.
5 shutouts, his 5th career shutout with Carolina, passing the franchise record, Cam Ward, and also passing another franchise legend, Arthur Urbe, for most playoff wins in franchise history in one postseason. Freddie Andersen, another former Leaf, getting it done this year in the playoffs. And, could we see an outside shot? Nikolai Ehlers for Conn Smythe. Connor had the OT winner, 2 assists yesterday. I think a lot of it is going to depend on how this final goes.
Sure.
If Carolina were to win for Carolina. And then Tyson says, just give it to Marner. He'll be the points leader anyways. Maybe, depending how it goes, maybe you could give it to Marner. I hadn't considered that, but we did see McDavid get it. Now, he was far and away the best in terms of points, but, Marner's got 21 points right now. The next closest Hurricanes got, what's Taylor Hall at?
13 these guys are at. So I think it's Freddie Andersen right now for Carolina, but if either of Hall or Blake has 8 points in 4 games and they sweep or something, then you could see one of those guys win it. Or if they have 3 game winners out of, the 4 games that they win, either of those 2 guys. So I think those 2 are in a position where if they go nuts, they could potentially win it. Taylor Hall or Jackson Blake, what a world that would be. Taylor Hall, Conn Smythe. But I think it's Frederik Andersen right now if they win.
All right. More hockey news. We had the Canada at the IIHF World Championships playing Team USA. Big rivalry game. Canada coming out on top. What was it? Was it 3-0, 4-0? I got to bring the number here. But Mark Scheifele with the 2 assists. 4-0 win for Canada. Jet Greaves. The shutout. What'd you make of this game? A scary incident as well at the beginning of the game. Evan Bouchard hit up high by Ryan Lindgren. Lindgren gets 5, and a game Canada not that successful on the power play, but certainly a scary moment for Evan Bouchard.
Yeah, it was, as the broadcast pointed out, and we all saw if you were watching the game, it looked like he went out cold immediately on that hit, and Lindgren was given a 5 and a game. IIHF, we know they're very strict with stuff like this. He immediately gets tossed, Ryan Lindgren. But good game for Canada. The first 2 periods, I texted you, Remis, throughout that Cooley, the USA netminder, was the only reason that game wasn't 3 or 4-0 very early on. And then in the third, when it was 2-0 Canada, there was a 5 to 10 minute stretch where the US was pressing and Jet Greaves had to make a number of incredible saves. So he played his part as well for sure. But definitely a game that Canada felt in control of. They get the first goal. Macklin Celebrini scores. Primary assist goes to Mark Scheifele on that one. And then Dylan Holloway scores to make it 2-0. Mark Scheifele, the primary assist on that one as well. And the broadcast was mentioning how the Canadian team was really looking for more out of that second line. Robert Thomas, Mark Scheifele, and Dylan Holloway. And they come through with that goal to make it 2-0. But Celebrini, I mean, he's so much fun to watch. He's so freaking good. And him and Crosby do so much, both at 5-on-5 and on the power play. And then Connor Brown and Sidney Crosby both scored into an empty net late to give Canada the 4-0 win. But yeah, I thought Canada dominated the first 2 periods. There was a 10-minute stretch in the third period, maybe more like 5 minutes, where I was scared for a bit. Jet Greaves absolutely held up his end of the bargain in terms of goaltending. And then Canada just cruised to a victory. And we don't know who they're playing next because they reseed, I believe, in the IIHF world. So there could be upsets on the other side of the bracket, if you will, that changes things on Canada's side. So Finland beat the Czechs earlier today, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Canada is playing Finland, but we'll see. The next game for them is Saturday. So we'll see who Canada plays in the semis. But a good win nonetheless, and good to see Mark Scheifele pick up a couple of primary assists.
Yeah, Sweden up on Switzerland right now, 1-0. Norway, Latvia tied 0-0. And yes, Switzerland, the host country. And Connor, the Blue Bombers preseason wraps up tomorrow with their final game. They're playing the BC Lions at Princess Auto Stadium. And we have a depth chart to talk about here. What do you make of the Bombers roster heading into tomorrow's game?
A lot of backups. So typically in just football, CFL, NFL, whatever, if you have 2 preseason games, one is on the road, one is at home, you'd elect to play your starters at home. I guess it's just comfier for them. You get used to playing at home and you'd like that. But the Bombers seemingly electing to play all of their starters on the road last week for at least a drive against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And then in this game, I don't know if you got the depth chart there, Remo, but it's basically all of their backups. Taylor Elgersma and Bryce Perkins are the only quarterbacks listed in that order too. So it looks like Taylor Elgersma will get the start. Dorian Singer has been a camp standout. I asked Ed Tait about him earlier today, which the interview will play in just a moment here. That he's playing, so good to see him get in the lineup, and we'll see what he can show. And then there's kind of this rotating door at defensive end opposite of Willie Jefferson with Deshaun Dixon, Kydron Jenkins, and Noor Gatkuth. All 3 of those guys are in at the end, so there's a little bit of competition there. I assume all 3 of them will get big playing time. Williams and Texada both starting at corner. There's a bit of a battle there. Jonathan Moxey, the offseason addition for the Bombers at corner, he will be one of the corners for sure. But the other side, will it be Trey Vavel, who's hurt and hasn't really been at camp? Will it be Williams, Texada? There's a bit of a battle going on there as well. So again, if you're going to the game tomorrow, more of a backup heavy lineup, but still excited to see Taylor Elgersma. And I've seen so many flashes in camp, saw some good flashes in the first preseason game, despite the ugly stat line, and excited to see what he can do, as well as Bryce Perkins, with both of those two getting the majority, if not all of the game.
On the BC side, Derek Taylor posted their depth chart. They're bringing their starting offense, including Nathan Rourke, but most of their defensive starters staying home. Farhan Lalji notes, Rourke expected to play 2 series max with a veteran offense around him. It's a very young group of defense with only Sankey and Williams as the veteran starters. Either way, Connor, looking at the weather for tomorrow's game.
It's going to be nice.
Well, it's 30 right now. Friday, it says 34, 20 a night. Amazing night at Princess Auto Stadium. And
Nathan Rourke's trying to sneak in a win. I see what he's up to here. He's trying to sneak in a win at Princess Auto Stadium. The guy's been snake bitten here forever. He's trying to get one in. I see what he's up to.
And I don't know if we have a line on CFL preseason if that is even a thing. They don't have that at Coolbed,
no.
But it should be a great night of football and just a great weather night. I got the patio open.
Oh yeah,
bring the bike out. Fantastic. So, and shout out to our winners yesterday, Jason Sheps and Pat Rathwell entered on our website, Manitoba Battery, hooking them up with tickets. And shout out to listener Scott Westman, who hooked Hustler up with some tickets as well. So, looking forward to that game. We're gonna talk with Ed Tait in a second about Bombers training camp, but first, here's Huss.
Folks, it's time to get your tickets for the Tri-Hospital Dream Lottery in support of the Health Sciences Center, the St. Boniface Hospital, and the HSC Children's Hospital. When you get your ticket, you're supporting important work at all 3 of our major hospitals, and you'll be entered to win a grand prize like we've never seen before. One of 6 $1.7 million dream home packages, or $1.35 million cash tax-free, a life-changing amount. But the earlier you buy, the more you can win. And check out the early bird prizes available with the deadline of midnight Friday, June 12th. Early bird prizes worth over $257,000. And one big winner is going to choose between a 26 Land Rover Range Rover SE, valued at almost $190K plus $50,000 cash, or a 26 Mercedes-Benz G580 SUV, valued at $245K. or you can take the money, $210,000 cash. They're also going to sprinkle 25 winners for the early bird 2 with $500 cash. So get your tickets now. You'll be in for the main draw. You'll be in for the early bird prizes. And again, it is all in support of the important work at our 3 major hospitals in town. Get your tickets today at tryhospitaldream.com. You can also get them in person at your local Red River Co-op location or London Drugs. But the best place and quickest place to do it is online, tryhospitaldream.com, in support of the Try Hospital Dream Lottery. We are into spring, folks, and that means it's a busy time for many people doing work. It's certainly a busy time for our friends at Cleanline Plumbing, Heating, and Electrical. Of course, Cleanline, for over 40 years, has been Winnipeg's most trusted plumbers, featuring fast responses, lasting results, and most importantly to you, 24/7 emergency services across all of Winnipeg. You can check out all their services at cleanline.ca and schedule an appointment there. But you never know when you're going to need Cleanline. So mark down the number, get it in your phone, 24/7 emergency services at 204-500-2001. Again, that's 500-2001. When you're in a jam, much like Adam Lowry has the back of the Winnipeg Jets, Cleanline has yours with 24/7 emergency services, 12 months a year here in Winnipeg. Big shout out to Jeremy and the gang at cleanline.ca. Our friends at Manitoba Battery are ready for Bomber season. Very excited to be a new corporate sponsor of the Bombers and powering the Winnipeg Blue Bombers this year, as they've been powering Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners and viewers for years with the best prices and the best in customer service for batteries for literally everything. Head to their website right now at manitobabattery.com for the latest on the Deep Cycle battery sale, which goes until the end of the month, $79.99 with core exchange. And of course, as you get ready to get out on the water with your boat, on the highway with your RV, on the trails with the dirt bike, a motorcycle, an ATV, you need batteries for all those things, and Manitoba Battery is the spot where you'll save big money, beating the pants off the big box stores with the best in customer service while you shop local and keep your money here in the province. 2 locations to serve you, Logan Avenue, Dovercourt Drive. Manitoba Battery also delivers citywide inside the perimeter. You can give them a call or order online today over at manitobabattery.com. And folks, if you have a move planned this spring or summer or into the fall, make sure to check in with our friends at Rolly's Transfer, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. They've been doing it for over 60 years, and it featured the white glove service that has so many of their customers coming back for subsequent moves after they try Rolly's for the first time. If you are moving, go to their website at rollies.com. Top right corner, you can click on Request an Estimate. Put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies. And then simply let them know when and where you're moving and what needs to go. And the friendly staff at Rollies will turn it around quickly with a great quote and get you locked in for the white glove treatment that they've been famous for now into their 7th decade. For all your moving needs, lean on our friends at Rollies Transfer, the most trusted name in the game. Find out more today at rollies.com.
There's us. He'll be back next week. We do have the results of our poll. It's been going for 28 minutes. Shout out to everyone who voted. Will you pay DAZN $24.99 a month to watch the 4 Saturday CFL games? Yes, 12%. No, 88%. So we'll see how this happens for them, but the CFL certainly getting the bag in their new broadcast deal announced this morning. Blue Bomber training camp winding down, the final preseason game tomorrow. Now, the depth chart just came out. Connor and I discussed that. We did catch up with Ed Tait just before it was announced to talk about, well, Bombers training camp, new additions, and biggest storylines heading into the season. Here's our conversation recorded earlier today with Ed Tait. Ed, how's training camp going for you? Winding it down, last full practice already. We got the final preseason game and the roster going to be set on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm not out there sweating or freezing it like it was the beginning of camp, but I'll tell you, I'm happy that this is almost over because, I love this game. I love this team and this league and everything, but sometimes training camp can drag on a little bit. So I'm happy that yesterday was the last full day of practice. I'm not alone in saying that based on what I'm hearing around the building. One more preseason game for some of the guys to pop out and try to make an impression. And then, as you said, Remo, the team has to make its final roster decisions on Saturday.
We'll certainly get into the first preseason game and what you thought of that, but you released a great video on the Bombers' social media channels the other day on some of the players that have stood out to you in training camp so far as it winds down and the Bombers get prepared to make some of those decisions. Who are some of the players that are maybe on the bubble that have stood out to you?
Yeah, it's been an interesting camp, Connor, in that respect. There's still some jobs up for grabs, starting jobs too. Like, there's not just the bottom of the roster that has to get filled out, or the players that, fill out the number 45, the last player on the roster. They've got some starting jobs that are up for grabs. So some of the guys that I've been writing about lately, Major Williams, I thought really played well, cornerback. He played well in Saskatoon. He might be the leading candidate for that other cornerback job opposite Jonathan Moxey. But the thing I was pointing out in that little clip that we did, Connor, was that it's interesting. Some of the guys that were parachuted in last year, they have that practice roster expansion in the fall, and it's basically allows teams to take a peek at guys that are on their neg list or players that they're planning to look at more in more detail in the following year. And some of those guys are the ones that are standing out here. Deshaun Dixon, the D lineman, Adrian Jenkins, the D lineman. He actually played in the game at the end of last year and had a sack against Montreal. And Major Williams, Rich Tejada, another defensive back. All those guys have had really good camps. And if I'm rattling off a couple other new players, Dorian Singer, the receiver's been good. Some of the American linemen have had good camps too. So I know this, that after Friday's game against BC, when the coaching and staff gets in there with the personnel department, they have to make their decisions. It's going to be tough because they're going to have to put some people on the practice roster that could very well be in the top 45, and they might have to cut guys that might be scooped up pretty quick by other teams in this league because it's been that good a camp.
A lot of names at camp and a lot of new names, during the offseason. We talked about the free agents they signed: Tim White, Jake Serezna, Jarrell Broxton, Tommy Neild, among the names. What have you seen from the new names in camp this year?
Yeah, it's been, kind of hit and miss, Remo, because like Jonathan Moxey, he's going to start at corner, but he's missed a lot of time lately. I think they're just trying to keep him healthy for next week. Same sort of situation with Nick Dembski, who's been out for a bit here. Jake Serezna missed some times, but what he's coming off a knee injury, so they're being careful with him too. But he's a guy he's just a beast. He's going to be a beast on the D-line, either at tackle or end. Tommy Neild is really consistent at practice every day. To me, one of the stars of training camp, and I thought he really looked good in the first drive last week, is Tim White. He just catches everything. He's a start to finish guy from the start of practice to the end. His motor doesn't dip at all. I knew he was good, but sometimes you get a guy into you can see every day in practice and you have a greater appreciation for him. Adam Bighill was one of those guys for me when he first came to Winnipeg. Tim White's right there with him. This guy does not have a bad practice. He does not have a bad rep. And I think that he's going to have a gabillion yards this year throwing with Zach Collaros.
So you mentioned Tim White, and he really stood out in the one drive that you mentioned in that preseason game, 3 catches with Zach Collaros. What are you expecting from the Tommy Condell offense this season? And is there anything in training camp that has led you to believe they might be more pass heavy or run heavy than you might have expected coming into it?
Yeah, that's the popular storyline, isn't it, coming into camp in the offseason when they hired Tommy Condell, because he seems to be pass heavy and people were concerned that, how much is he going to run? I've heard some people say that Brady's going to have a career year because Tommy Condell's been in this league for a long time for a reason. And I don't think that you look at Brady Oliveira in the backfield and not keep him busy. So it's really hard to get a feel, Connor, for what they might look like because they're still installing stuff every day at training camp. New faces, new terminology, even for a guy like Zach Collaros. So it's been kind of vanilla, and that's by design, right? And I imagine it'll be the same thing tomorrow against BC. You don't want to be showing a whole lot of things for that other teams to get a read on your tendencies already. I think paramount is for Zach Collaros to feel comfortable in this offense, because as number 8 goes, so goes this offense this year. And, there's no hiding from the fact that in the last couple of years, this offense has really dipped in productivity. And I think they were 7th in passing in the last couple of years. So that's a number that's certainly got to grow. There's a lot of encouragement, though. The buzz you get from the players on offense in particular is that he's a great teacher. Tommy Condell's a great teacher, communicates things really well. And so that's all well and good. We'll see what it looks like next week in Calgary.
You mentioned the offense. On defense, going from the preseason game, it looked like the Bombers were blitzing a bit more than they have in the past with Jordan Younger as coordinator. Is this a shift in philosophy for the team?
Remo, kind of the same answer I just gave Connor on the offense. I'm not sure what that was all about last week. There was a lot more blitzing, especially late when Saskatchewan had their young quarterback in there. I'm not sure what they're going to do. You'd like to think that if they're stacked along the D line like they are, you add a piece like Jake Serezna, Cam Lawson's healthy again. They're really happy with these 2 defensive ends that I mentioned in Deshaun Dixon and Cadron Jenkins. You'd like to think that you'd see more blitzes and the like, but that's, again, Jordan Younger doesn't want to get pigeonholed into anything. And I know that we saw so many people drop back into coverage last year. They're not going to give up on that. That's for sure. But I wonder, and I don't know if I haven't seen any evidence yet, if they're going to try to blitz more or bring more pressure again. We're going to get a way better read on that next week in Calgary, because I think teams are just really, really, really vanilla in the training camp and preseason.
You mentioned the stacked D-line and how that could play a role on this defense. Who has the inside edge on the defensive line spot opposite Willie Jefferson? Obviously, Jefferson, Serezna, and Lawson are in the middle. The other side, you mentioned Deshaun Dixon, Kyron Jenkins. Who do you think kind of has the inside edge on that spot?
It's a great question, and part of the issue is that there's going to be so many different variations of what they do up front, I think. Jake Serezna can play end, so they might flip him out sometimes. Newer Gatkuth, the number 1 draft pick, could be in there in some situations, and Cam Lawson comes out, so you have a Canadian for a Canadian. We've seen an awful lot in training camp with Tony Jones up at the line of scrimmage, a linebacker almost as a rush end. But if you're asking me in a traditional 4-3 defense, who is the other defensive end? The guy that they raved about early was Deshaun Dixon. He blew his knee out in Jacksonville when he was in the NFL. They like him. He's a beast. He's a big dude on special teams too. The guy that's really come on lately has been Cadron Jenkins. Again, played in that last regular season game last year and had a sack. He's lower to the ground, and he's got and this, I hate to be put a whole lot of hyperbole out there, but the way he rushes the passer reminds me an awful lot of Tyrone Jones from the 80s. Just a kind of a linebacker body, but quick enough to get inside and around tackles. And so there's some speed there. There's an awful lot to like, and we'll see. I think both those guys are going to get work along with Newer Gatkuth and Jake Serezna. So that's one of the things that Jordan Younger, the defensive coordinator, does as well as anybody in this league is camouflage things on defense. And so we're going to see a whole bunch of different packages. It might not just be one guy there. It could be kind of a rotation.
Going back to the offense, Ontario Wilson was in the NFL last year, missed training camp. How much of a benefit for him is it going to be to have this full training camp? And, we talked about Tim White already, but this is a bit of a remade receivers group compared to a year ago.
That's a good point too, Remo. When he came back last year, you're right. He had been with the Jets, and you miss a whole season. It's never easy to parachute into a team halfway through the year. I thought he put up pretty good numbers last year, but Mike O'Shea mentioned him yesterday after practice that he's been really coming on too, and he's such a key part of this receiving corps. Sometimes I'm guilty of it too. We forget how good he was. He had 1,000 yards before with Winnipeg. So you pair him with Nick Dembski and Tim White and Tommy Neal and whatever else they throw out there, whether it's another Canadian or American, and that's a pretty good receiving core. I expect Pokey Wilson to be a 1,000-yard guy. He makes all those acrobatic catches. I think he can be the deep threat. He's tougher than people think for the catches he makes, too, in traffic. That was such an important get for them to have him come back from the NFL and come back to Winnipeg last year, and then for him to sign an extension in the fall. It kind of solidifies things at a position group, to your point, Remo, that was a little unsettled last year after Kenny Lawler left.
And with that wide receiver group improving this year with Neal and White and Ontario Wilson and Broxton on the O-line helping out as well, what are your expectations for Zach Collaros going into this season? A couple down years in terms of the passing game for this offense. And this is arguably the best support group he's had in a couple of years here.
Yes, that's so true. It is the best talent around him in a bit. Getting Broxton to kind of solidify the right flank is really important. They're going to pound the ball, I think, with Brady still. But it really is all about Zach, right? And I think that you bring in a coordinator he's comfortable with. You surround him with better pieces. The expectations are that he can get back to where he once was. And I know people will point at the age and, the fact that he missed 5 starts last year and didn't finish, a handful of other games. But when a guy's comfortable back there, I think it makes the world a difference. And we've already seen that in training camp. And it's such an important thing. If they can get him back to the way he was, this team is a legit contender. And if he's not comfortable back there, then everybody's going to have the same concerns, right? Is this team the 10-8 team that's in decline, or can it get back to what it was before last season?
One thing's for sure, if Collaros does go down with injury like he did last season, the quarterback room looking a bit different. This year, no Chris Streveler, Terry Wilson suspended and then released. How is it going to shake out with the roles with Taylor Elgersma and Bryce Perkins, and what have you seen from them so far in camp, and could we see more of them, or what's the quarterback going to look like in tomorrow's game as well?
Yeah. That's sort of the juicy subplot to this game tomorrow, right, is what happens with the quarterbacks. We always have our eyes on the quarterbacks as fans, but I think it's still unsettled behind Zach as to who's number 2 and number 3. We might even get some ideas on that based on who does short yardage tomorrow. So it's going to be interesting. I thought that there was so much hype about Taylor Elgersma last week, and myself included. And I thought he pressed a little bit. He admitted that afterwards. He was trying to make a big play, trying to impress, and he's not the first guy to do that. And then when Bryce Perkins came in late, I thought he looked like a guy that had been a pro for a while. So, you come into the game late, it's the fourth quarter, and you're surrounded by guys that, are battling for roster spots. They're not starters. That's across the board, right? The O-line in front of you is different. It's not Tim White at receiver. It's not Pokey Wilson or Nick Dembski. But I thought Perkins showed some poise in those circumstances. So to me, what happened was I would have said last week going into that game in Saskatoon that in my books, Taylor Elgersma looked like the second best quarterback. Now I think that picture's a little bit blurrier. I don't think they're concerned about what they have. I just think that they are uncertain right now as to who would be number 2 and who would be number 3. So that's why tomorrow night's so important. We haven't seen the depth chart yet, Remo and Connor, to know yet what they might do. And Mike O'Shea will never tell us anyway what the rotation might be or what the snap count might be for either one.
Mike O'Shea keeping his cards close to the chest? No, it doesn't sound like him for sure. I wanted to ask about Dorian Singer. You mentioned him earlier on in our conversation, but he was one of those players that Taylor Elgersma was throwing to with the 2s. He made a nice throw to him later in the game. He's been a camp standout. Do you think he makes this team? And if he does, what role is he going to play?
To me, that question really relies on the health of Trey Vavel, because the one thing that Dorian did really well last week in Saskatoon was he returned kicks too. And if Trey Vavel can't go, all of a sudden you're adding a guy that's going to give you some snaps on offense as a receiver. But, in this league, you're going to return so many kicks and punts and kickoffs. So that could be his path onto the roster in week 1 at least. So we'll see. That answer might not get answered really until Monday when they return to practice and whether Trey Vavel's out there. If he is, that makes it harder for Dorian Singer to get on the roster. But they've got so much flexibility too, Connor. You've been out to practice a few times. If they could start 3 Canadians in the receiving corps, but if they don't, maybe it is Dorian Singer that gets one of those starting jobs out there because they've got so much ratio flexibility elsewhere on the roster. They could start another American at receiver. So I hate to give you a vague answer, but that's something that's not going to be defined concretely until early next week, probably.
As we look ahead to the season, I mean, what are the expectations for the blue and gold this season? It's funny to say it was kind of a disappointing year last year getting into the playoffs. They didn't host a playoff game like they have, but what do you see as the ceiling for this team?
It's a good question, and it's a good point, too. It's funny, when Jake Serezna signed here, we had him into the show here in February, and I asked him about, what he saw from afar, and he said, it's kind of funny, you come into the building and everybody's down about a 10-8 season, and he came from Edmonton where, that would have been glorious, right? They would have been throwing a parade for a playoff spot. So it just says something about the expectations around here. I expect this team to be better than last year, but the division is so tough, right? The West Division looks like a nightmare right now. You tell me who the worst team in this division is. I honestly don't know, and I'm not sure it's so clear at the top either. I know a lot of people like BC and Saskatchewan, the defending champions. Calgary beat Winnipeg 3 times last year, so Edmonton loaded up in free agency. It's going to be fun, but I expect Winnipeg to be a double-digit win team again, and it might just come down to having a better record in your own division as to whether you get a home playoff game or not.
How much do you think, you mentioned the top of the West Division, how much do you think some of the losses that Saskatchewan had in free agency, some of the players that left after their Grey Cup championship, how much will that affect them? And is the Broxton subtraction from the BC offensive line maybe an underrated part of their offense this year too?
Yeah, so I'll answer the Saskatchewan part first, Connor. Winnipeg lived this, right? You go to 5 straight Grey Cups, you win a couple championships, you get picked over in free agency, and that certainly happened to Saskatchewan. To their immense credit, and I've got a ton of respect for Corey Mason, Jeremy O'Day, they've done a good job there, man. That's a good organization, and I'm sure they found pieces to replace the guys that they lost. And they lost a few. They lost A.J. Allen to Ottawa. They lost Malik Carney to Edmonton. Those are a couple names right off the bat that jump out to me. Calgary lost some guys to the NFL. It's going to be interesting. The BC thing, Jarrell Broxton is a massive get for Winnipeg, and you would think it leaves a hole in BC. But Ryan Rigmade and the GM there has done a really good job there. Buck Pierce knows what he's doing. And the one thing about Nathan Rourke is that the ball comes out of his hand pretty quick, and he's as mobile as anybody in the league. I'm not sure losing Broxton is as big a deal for them as it is for us to get him here in Winnipeg, if that makes any sense. I think that Rourke's skill set allows them to maybe offset that loss better than most. So, again, 1 to 5 in the West, I wouldn't know where to place anybody right now, but it's just going to be fun. Like, sign me up for all of this because Winnipeg opens next week in Calgary, and already that feels like an important divisional matchup, even though it's June.
And how about in the East? Davis Alexander, great season last year, but not 100% in the Grey Cup. Is it the Alouettes' division to lose in the East?
I wouldn't sleep on Hamilton too much. Bo Levi Mitchell, a resurgence of him last year. They just signed Kenny Lawler to a massive deal. I'm not sure about Toronto coaching change there. Chad Kelly comes back, though. And then this morning, Ottawa announced that it's going to be Jake Mayer as their starting quarterback, not Drew Brown for the season. So that was a bit of a surprise to me. I guess they probably have as many question marks in the East Division as you might think. But you're right. If Davis Alexander is healthy, that Montreal team is pretty scary. But I wouldn't sleep on the Tiger Cats either because they've got a lot of weapons, and Scott Milanovich knows how to coach offense. So it's going to be, again, that division's pretty stacked too. The only question mark for me or mystery is Toronto, and I don't mean to sell them short, but they've got a coaching change there too. And so sometimes you never know what you're going to get until they play a game and it actually matters in the standings.
Well, Ed, thanks so much for joining us today. Just before we let you go, need your initial reaction on the big news in the CFL today. A new 6-year agreement between the CFL and Bell Media, who is no longer just the exclusive partner or broadcast partner for the CFL, DAZN getting in with Saturday night games starting in 2027 and a couple of playoff games as well. What was your initial reaction to the new TV deal?
Well, my initial reaction is that it's positive, right? It's going to mean a lot of money for these teams, and that's the main thing. You know, I think sometimes we get the blinders on in Winnipeg because this franchise was, playing to sell out crowds and announcing healthy profits every year in the last few years. It's not the same like that around the league. So this kind of deal financially is really worth a lot to some of these owners in the league. That's the first reaction. And I saw a lot of negative blowback from fans online, and I get it. People don't want to have to pay for another subscription service to watch one game a week. But in terms of what it does for the league's profile, it's pretty big. When you line up with DAZN and YouTube, but those aren't small players in this streaming service, and I think it's important for that too. So, you can't please everybody. There's a lot of people that wanted the TSN shouldn't have the exclusive rights to the league. They wanted to see another broadcast partner. So now the league has done that, and there's other people that aren't happy with having to pay more. I'm hoping that DAZN, and Connor, you touched about this with me before we came on air. I hope that they have some sort of CFL-friendly package. We're Winnipeggers. We like a deal. I'm of Scottish heritage. We're notoriously cheap. So let's get some kind of package for CFL fans that's tasty for everybody.
Well, looking forward to seeing how it plays out, and looking forward to seeing all your great content, Ed, on bluebombers.com, and you're back with the Huddle this year on YouTube as well. What can you tell Bomber fans about all the great content that you have coming in the pipeline?
Yeah, our crew, I won't reveal anything I'm not supposed to, but our crew was doing some promotional shoots yesterday with some of the players, and it's going to be very, very cool. So keep your eye open for that. We got the best video team in the league as far as I'm concerned. The Huddle, we've got a CFL preview show next week with Derek Taylor of CJOB and the legendary Bob Irving, formerly of CJOB. We're going to look at the league and the season ahead. That'll be next Tuesday. Lots of stuff. We like that. We have a lot of fun over here. I'll say that. And we just like to pump out as much as we can. So just keep your eyes peeled to the Bombers social media channels and bluebombers.com.
There it is in Blue Bombers here on YouTube as well. Ed, you're looking great in that new studio. So thank you so much for coming on with us and talking blue and gold. Hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Do want to thank our great supporters at Princess Auto for their support of WST. Listen, we're counting down to getting back to Princess Auto Stadium for Blue Bomber football this year. But in the meantime, you're probably getting ready to start some projects for the summer or get going, of course. And that's when you go to Princess Auto, because Princess Auto has the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new waiting for you at Princess Auto. So pop by and see them. Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, out in Brandon. And, of course, you can also shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. And we will look forward to seeing all of you at Princess Auto Stadium coming up for Blue Bomber season. Weather's getting nice, just in time for a trip down to Chud's Power Sports to take your summer to a whole nother level. Chud's Power Sports up in Gimli at the corner of Highway 8 and 231 is the power sports superstore in Manitoba, featuring the best in new and used vehicles, including boats, RVs, motorcycles, ATVs, side-by-sides, golf carts, outboard motors for those boats, Argos, off-road vehicles. Chud's Power Sports has it all, and they've had it all for a long time. Over 80 years in the business with the most experienced and trusted staff in the game. and incredible financing options for both new and used equipment. Check them out online at chudspowersports.com. Up in the top right corner, you'll see a link for e-commerce store. You hit on that, that'll take you to True North Parts with incredible savings on clearance gear and equipment. You're going to want to check that out. But get ready for summer and take it to the next level with Chud's Power Sports, Manitoba's Power Sports Superstore up in Gimli. Pop by, see the Derminator and the gang, and get ready for your summer. Huge thanks to our friends at St. Vital Dental Center, who, of course, very proud supporters of golf in Manitoba. Dr. Terry and St. Vital Dental Center presenting the Manitoba Match Play Championships, which were heading through the end of May. They're also there for all of your dental needs, as they've been doing for generations of Winnipeggers and Manitobans. And they've got a beautiful new facility now, 167 St. Anne's, convenient free parking right behind the building, and a full array of dental services for clients from 6 months to 99 plus, including cleanings, checkups, all the way to things like dental implants. They do it all at St. Vital Dental Center. So if you need some work on your grill, or you're looking for a long-term home for you and your family, make it St. Vital Dental Center. Pop by and see Dr. Terry. You can go to stvitaldental.ca to make an appointment today. And we are counting down to the World Cup, and so are our friends at Boston Pizza. Now, throughout the hockey playoffs, we've been enjoying the playoff menu, the pizza flights, the wing flights, the MVP platter, those ice-cold schooners. And that's not changing as we get ready for the World Cup. Boston Pizza is going to be your World Cup headquarters with big events and great prizes around the Canada games and all the games shown throughout the tournament at your local Boston Pizza. So get ready to throw the red on. Join your friends at Boston Pizza for all Canada games and the World Cup coming up at your local sports headquarters, your local Boston Pizza. And as always, if you're staying at home, you can get it hot and fresh to your door by ordering online at bostonpizza.com.
There's us returning next week. Returning the show right now in his new look office, Brandon Rewucki, Skates and Plates podcast. Brandon, what's going on? Thanks for joining us. How have you been enjoying the Stanley Cup playoffs? Are you ready for the Vegas Golden Knights back in the final for the third time in their 9-year franchise history?
Yeah, no, doing good. Nice too that now people can understand I don't do this from a bathroom. Just turn around. That's it. I got an elliptical in here that I've strategically hid. But this is where I've always done it. The Golden Knights. It's funny as a Flyers fan. You think I would feel something with Torts and Carter Hart going to the Cup Finals so soon after being omitted from their future plans, but I don't really feel much. I think the Tortorella thing's an amazing story. He's one of those guys that he's parachuted into the perfect situation where he's the ultimate jumper cable. If he's given a veteran team that is willing to sacrifice and play a certain way, and he's able to motivate them and not get to know them and piss them off over a long stretch of time, it's going to be a relationship that works really well. And we're seeing them. They're playing towards hockey to a T. That game. I know Colorado was dealing with injuries, but to see them basically take the will out of the Colorado Avalanche, where they just couldn't generate anything. It was pretty remarkable. And it's now that they're in the Cup final too, it's pretty wild to say their closest test, their hardest test, came against Utah, not the President's Trophy Colorado Avalanche, but Utah had Vegas on the ropes big time in that first round series, and they just couldn't close the deal. And you give the Golden Knights a little bit of life, and this is what they do. There's very few franchises that in this league that can say we are as successful as the Vegas Golden Knights, and this is what they do time and time again. They've been bold, they've been cutthroat, but they're also playing for more Stanley Cups than 99% of the league right now. So I don't know how many people would change places after the big upset a couple of days ago.
That's such a big part of the shock factor for me, too, is that Colorado ripped through their first 2 rounds. Vegas looked like regular season Vegas. Like, they won, but they didn't look impressive. And now, of course, they sweep. You talked about John Tortorella. They fire Bruce Cassidy with 8 games left. Torts comes in and famously doesn't have a contract for next season. 2-part question. Is Tortorella a lock to be back next season in your eyes for Vegas? And do you think that this working so well for Vegas will result in more teams doing this in the future?
Yeah, it's a good 2-parter. I don't think, first off, that this means he's going to be behind the bench for them next season. Could be, but this is Vegas. Like,
yeah.
They're not afraid to, maybe make the unpopular decision and do what they think is best for their team. Because I would say 95% of teams in the NHL would have held on to their head coach going into the final 10, 15 games of a season where they're battling for the division lead, even if they were underperforming, right? And so there's that part of it that most teams wouldn't have put him in there in the first place. I mean, the one reason I hesitate to say that he's definitely going to be back next year, he did cost them a 2nd-round pick. Like that is extremely significant. We just see so few penalties of that nature. Having said that, though, if he does win a Stanley Cup, it's pretty hard not to bring that guy back for at least another go-round. But if you ask me over under 1.5 years with Vegas, I'll hammer the under on that for sure. 0.5, then we got a little bit of a debate there. So I think everything's totally up in the air right now. I do think probably the safe bet is that he does return for at least to start next season, and then where it goes from there, I'm not totally sure. But it's tough to argue that if you need a guy to come in and provide instantaneous results, he is the best option. He's going to grate on everybody as his tenure continues there. But if it ends up with where they're at right now, you know what? You can handle a year, 2 years of, friction and icy relationships because, again, they're playing for the ultimate prize right now.
On the flip side, Brandon, Colorado, this was a year where they've been building to go all in, trading first-round picks for the next couple seasons. You bring in Kadri, bring in Brock Nelson. It didn't go well at all. They were left shaking their heads. Hey, we got dominated like the way they dominated the Jets in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Where does Colorado go from here? How do they rebound? And just how disappointing of this what season was it for them after winning the President's Trophy and not even winning a game in the conference final?
Yeah, the President's Trophy means nothing to them. So it's you get to the conference final, it's a failure. They had 1 goal, Stanley Cup, and they didn't reach it. And it's pretty like Connor said, there was no indication this was happening. Like, they dismantled LA. They, for the most part, took care of business against a really good Minnesota Wild team. It looked like this was just a coronation. Like, it was just a matter of time until we see Carolina, Colorado in the Stanley Cup final. And then, I don't know, it's tough to say it's one exact thing. Like, I don't think there was one main issue that plagued them. And it's tough to say one thing is what has a team swept out of the postseason in the Final Four. It was just literally every possible bad thing all happened to them at the exact same time while Vegas found their footing at the exact same time. They had games 2 and 3 in their pocket, and they just gave them away. Like, it was basically a minute of a lack of focus that cost them game 2, and then they just couldn't find a way to hold on to a 3-0 lead in game 3. So it wasn't like Vegas necessarily, stomped all over them for 4 games. I think game 4 they certainly did, but the first 3 games were pretty competitive. But then they had injuries, they had underperformers. The big things to me, if I'm looking at Colorado's situation going into next year, is the first thing has to be the head coach. Jared Bednar is one of the best coaches in the NHL, but especially as we see in Vegas, everybody has a shelf life. And it's not even with the Avs, like, do they need a better coach? It's just, do you need a different coach? You need a different voice saying the same things, but it just resonates with the players in a different way. So that's going to be, I think, the big thing there, because I don't know how much they can really change Remo. Like they've emptied the prospect and pick pool, which I agree with. Like, you're going for it right now. So I'm sure there's little wiggle room for them to try to get out of things in that regard. So coach might be the only button that you can push. I mean, the other thing, and I wonder if this is the guy kind of going under the radar in terms of, getting a bunch of flack, is Marty Nekash has now made this a perennial thing where he just no shows in the postseason. He did it last year in Colorado. He did it for the majority of his career in Carolina. There were times that McKinnon and Makar would fail to produce at a high level, and Mikko Rantanen would carry the team. And that was a big part of why they won the Stanley Cup. Now you look at their secondary support pieces, and Nekash gave him nothing. Brock Nelson was horrendous. Nazem Kadri wasn't much better. Gabe Landeskog, I think, just with his knee, is a shadow of who he used to be. I don't know. They're going to be one of the top two teams of the division for, I think, a few years now at least. But you do wonder if it's just one and done for them. It's not the worst thing in the world to win a Stanley Cup and that's it. But it's just hard to do. Mario Lemieux only won 2. You can go up and down the list of legendary players that have won 1 or 2 cups, and just might end up being that Colorado had everything in line for that 1 cup run, and that's the peak of the mountain for them, and they're not going to be able to get back to it.
Really, really hard to win a Stanley Cup, Brandon. I should mention this segment brought to you by Prairie Toyota dealers, looking to dominate off the ice as much as your team does on it. Check out the Toyota Tacoma. Its standard I-Force engine boasts an impressive towing capacity of up to 6,400 pounds. In fact, it's the most powerful Tacoma ever. So whether you're hauling gear to the rink or heading to an away game, you can tackle it with ease. The available panoramic multi-terrain view monitor gives you a live underfloor view to navigate even the toughest terrain. When it's time to load up, the available power liftgate makes loading your gear in and out a cinch. Experience power, capability, and convenience with the Toyota Tacoma. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Prairie Toyota dealer during Red Tag days from March through May. Connor?
Brandon, I wanted to ask you about the Eastern Conference Finals and what we've seen in that series. The shots on goal through 4 games are 136 to 65 in Carolina's favor. We are seeing, as you saw as a Flyers fan, one of the most dominant defensive smothering performances in a Stanley Cup playoff run that I can remember in my lifetime. What do you think Carolina is doing so well in this series that has them in control over Montreal? And then if it does end up being Carolina and Vegas as we expect, are you expecting that series to just be a bunch of 2-1 games, 1-1 overtime, all of that stuff? Or do you think maybe there's a little bit more offense once those two teams play each other?
Yeah, I guess the first thing with Carolina is I think 90% of fans should be cheering for the Hurricanes to win this one. I've been thinking about this a little more, and there's in so many sports right now, but maybe specifically if we just keep it to hockey, in terms of roster building and team building, there's just so much of you can't win unless you have a top 3 pick, and then you can't win unless you have a top 5 center and a top 5 defender. You can't win unless you have the best of the best, and the only way you get them is in the top 3 picks of the draft, and the only way you get them is if you lose 1,000 games in a row. Carolina would be the perfect counter argument to that, because Sebastian Aho is great. He's not a top 10 center in the NHL, also drafted outside the first round. Their best wingers are in combination Jarvis, Ehlers, and Svechnikov. And it's funny, Svechnikov was a top 3 pick, and he's probably the worst. He's been the least impactful player out of the bunch. And even then, you wouldn't put any of those 3 in the top 10, maybe even the top 20 wingers in all of hockey. Same goes on defense. Jacob Slavin's great. He's one of the best, if not the best, defenseman in hockey. He's maybe a top 10 defenseman. And even then, that's kind of pushing it, right? Like, Carolina is doing and has been doing these last several years what so many people say, but we don't see actually bear fruit. And that's, you build a deep, talented team that is willing to play the right way, and you can go toe to toe against anybody. And that's what they've done. Like, they have just run rough. Like, they gave Montreal one period this entire series, and since then it's just been complete and utter domination. And if not for the Montreal voodoo magic of the postseason, like, this series could also be over as well through 4 games. So I love the way Carolina plays. They play very similarly to Florida, where, and it's difficult when you're full aggressive all the time and your defensemen are playing on the front foot and you're pinching in. It's really difficult to break out and do so clear. Like, you need to be borderline perfect, and Montreal just isn't capable in this stage of their team building to play with poise and under pressure like that. And to be fair to them, I don't know how many teams are going to be able to. So if that's ultimately the series we see, which it does trend heavily towards going that way, it's fascinating because, you talk about the shot disparity between Carolina and Montreal. It's almost like the unstoppable force meets the immovable object. Carolina's propensity to shoot everything on net, followed by a John Tortorella team's propensity to block literally anything that comes within a 5-foot radius of the center of the ice. So something's got to give there. I'm intrigued to see how it plays out. I really wouldn't have a great read on that series right now, because I do think Carolina might be a bit of a different beast as to what Vegas has seen so far. You wonder a little bit, like, if Vegas can get a little more traffic and shots on net, like, can Freddie Anderson hold up? We know his injury history. I know he's gotten some time off here, but like, he's looked okay this postseason, but shaky at times too. The easy bet is we're going to see some low scoring games there because of how defensively solid both teams are. But I feel like when we say that, we get 5-4 shootouts each and every game. So not really sure how it's going to play out yet, but I think in terms of the good of the sport, I would argue that Carolina should be the team that everybody is supporting to win through.
Have to ask you this one, Brandon. What's it been like for you watching Nikolai Ehlers do what he's doing for Carolina and score that OT winner, which really turned the series in Carolina's favor?
Yeah, have you guys talked about that so far? Yeah, a little bit.
Once or twice.
Once or twice. That's we all know. Like, we saw it for 7. Like, that's Ehlers to a T, right? He's he's a game breaker. The one thing I'll say is this is going to be the end of guys walking out of Winnipeg right into free agency. We don't have to debate, was it the right move? Was it not the right move? Regardless, now you have a year, maybe 2 years left on your deal. We need a commitment, or we're getting assets for you. That's all I see when I see Nikolai Ehlers doing what he's been doing for Carolina so far this postseason. Is if anybody's contract is winding down and it's 1 year to go, and you're not sure which way that is going to go, a trade has to be mandatory, because the Jets losing him for nothing turned out to be pretty catastrophic, regardless of what you think of his impact. Just the fact that the Jets lost 60 plus points and replaced it with nothing. Like, you can't overcome that, especially with the way the NHL is nowadays with the rising cap, and it's just so difficult to bring in an injection of talent because everybody's locking theirs up. To lose that for nothing, I think that's been a very, very tough lesson learned by Chevy and company there, and it'll be interesting to see what happens if Josh Morrissey is in that similar state, who has, I believe, 2 years left on his deal. Obviously, they can't sign anything until next summer, but if there isn't a signing by next summer, how quickly do they feel necessitated to make a move on that one? That's thankfully a 12-month away storyline, but something certainly to keep in mind as we head into this upcoming season and maybe even the trade deadline if things aren't going well for the Jets in back-to-back years.
Brandon, I'll ask you just a quick hitter because I know you got to go in a moment here. Alex Tuck, July 1, where does he end up? Is it back with the Buffalo Sabres? Could you see a team like Seattle, who's desperate for scoring talent, throwing a bag of cash at him? What do you think Alex Tuch's market will be after his rough showing in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and where do you think he ends up on July 1?
I don't think he hits July 1. I
No.
think ultimately he's going to find some common ground with Buffalo here. I think from his perspective, maybe there might be business unfinished, and I think from Buffalo's perspective, like I get they lost, it sucked, but the vibes there, complete 180, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to go into this offseason with a black cloud like that, where again you lose a player for nothing. It doesn't sound like they're all that far apart. I just think this is something that gets done for in and around 10-ish million. And I think if you're Alex Tuch, you live a pretty good life after that, knowing you've got 60, 70, 80 million coming up through your 30s. So I think the worst free agent class in history gets even a little more depleted. And we're left with, not even the Charlie Coyle sweep. I don't know, the Mason Marchment sweepstakes?
Boone Jenner.
We'll see what
Jenner
happens.
sweepstakes. Can't wait.
Well, Brandon, it's been great catching up with you this week. Enjoy the warm weather this weekend. I know you've got a busy one with plenty of kids' activities, right, Brandon?
Yeah, that's the life. So we'll find a way to have some fun. Hopefully, I don't know if you can tell right now, but the eyes are a little red from the allergies. So it'll be another battle this weekend, but looking forward to it. Try to come out on top.
Perfect. There he is, Brandon Rewucki. Check out his podcast wherever you get your podcast. I know a lot of people who listen to this also on Apple or Spotify. Type it in, Skates and Plates. Plenty more discussion coming up with Connor and I. But first, here's us.
Your World Cup headquarters is Royal Sports at 750 Pembina Highway. If you haven't already geared up for the biggest event of the summer, it's time to get down to 750 Pembina Highway and get yourself in red and white with gear for Canada's national team as Canada hosts the World Cup. Royal Sports is the World Cup headquarters with gear from all around the world, with the top teams competing in the World Cup. Some incredible World Cup merchandise as well. So start it off there, and while you're there, check out their soccer gear, softball, baseball, tennis, the incredible selection of bikes in the back. And make a note, because the final weekend of May, the 30th and 31st, it is tent sale time at Royal Sports. 50% off or more off, thousands of pairs of shoes and merchandise. Make a plan to not miss out on the incredible sales at the Royal Sports tent sale on the 30th and the 31st. The Winnipeg Gold Eyes out hitting the road after the weekend, but we've got a great season of Gold Eyes baseball ahead of us, including a Winnipeg Sports Talk event at the end of June, which we'll hope you'll join us for again. We've had incredible turnout the last couple of years. But in the meantime, make your plans, whether it be for a group, whether you want to do a corporate patio party, or just getting out in the sun in the summer at Blue Cross Park and watching the boys of summer do their thing with the cold LBJ in your hand and some of the incredible eats available throughout the ballpark. Goldeyes.com is where you'll find all the information on ticketing for individuals, games, groups, and more. And of course, you can stay tuned to the Gold Eyes all season long through goldeyes.com as well. Looking forward to seeing all of you at the ball game. Man, we've had a lot of fun working with our friends at Travel Manitoba. This is a great time to familiarize yourselves with some of the great options in and around the province when we're getting to the holiday time and, maybe getting out of the city and seeing things outside of the perimeter. If you're planning your next adventure, start with Travel Manitoba. And whether you're searching for a road trip inspiration, hidden gems, or the latest festivals and events, everything you need is waiting at travelmanitoba.com. Looking for ideas on the go? Give them a follow on social media at Travel Manitoba for real-time inspiration, local tips, and can't-miss experiences from across the province. And if you prefer a personal touch, stop by one of the visitor information center at the Forks in Winnipeg. We're going to be looking forward to doing a live show down at the Visitors Information Center early next month as well. And speaking of great things to do in the summer, the ponies are back at Assiniboia Downs, live racing every Tuesday and Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. post time, all summer long, as well as select Mondays. And if you really want to step up your racing experience, make a reservation in the clubhouse dining room and take advantage of that incredible world-class prime rib buffet and wagering from your table all night long. All the information on the upcoming and current live racing season is online at asdowns.com. And if you want to go head-to-head with myself and Michael Remis on our picks throughout the week, you can always play online at hpibet.com.
There's us. He'll be back again next week, enjoying some well-deserved time off. We did have the news today, very sad news. Claude Lemieux, 4-time Stanley Cup champion, known, at this time of year, playoff hockey, you'd think Claude Lemieux, former Conn Smythe winner, over 1,200 regular season games, 80 playoff goals, tied for 9th in NHL history, and we just saw him lighting the torch at the Eastern Conference Final in Montreal, where he won one of his 4 Stanley Cups. We have a report here from The Athletic. Michael Russo, Pierre Lebrun, and Rebecca Tauber, they reporting, when asked about Lemieux's death, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office told The Athletic that deputies responded early Thursday morning to a suicide attempt at a furniture showroom, which state records show is in Lake Park, Florida, and is owned by Lemieux and his wife, Deborah. The sheriff's office secured the business for investigation. The Palm Beach County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed Lemieux's death, but declined to release any records, citing a Florida statute exempting suicide cases from public records requirements. So very, very sad news, and the tributes are pouring in. Today is a dark day for Canadians, family, and the entire hockey community, said Jeff Molson, owner and CEO of the Canadians, adding, a fierce competitor who rose to the occasion in big moments. Claude was relentless, courageous, and tenacious player who led the team to the highest honors. He embodied the very essence of being a Montreal Canadiens player. Another tribute pouring in immediately. I saw Darren McCarty with the Red Wings, who Claude feuded with in the 1996 playoffs. And later on, he tweeted a broken heart emoji and then put out this tribute on social media.
Hey guys, D-Mac. Just found out a little while ago about Claude Lemieux. For all yous out there, isn't it apropos that I found out before it was released from 33? Chris Draper told me. Sad day. Sad day. Another brother gone. All I'm going to say at this point, and I can say a lot of things, and I will, but if you're struggling out there, no matter what, just reach out for some help. It can never be that bad. So it's a sad day, no matter what. Rest in peace, Claude.
There's Darren McCarty, and hard not to think of Claude Lemieux, think of playoff performer, but also think of Red Wings Avalanche. Connor, Claude Lemieux a bit before your time, but again, hockey legend.
Yeah, hockey legend. And I brought up the stats earlier on. Top 10 in playoff games played, top 10 in playoff goals scored. His teams made the playoffs in 15 straight seasons. So a player that, if you were around for that era, I was not, but you saw a lot of Claude Lemieux. So very, very tragic story, and certainly not what we wanted to hear on this Wednesday.
Yeah, Murray Sizzler commenting, I thought Claude was a player agent as well, certainly involved the last couple of years as a player agent. So again, condolences to his family. The chat certainly rocked here, and again, very surprising, 60 years old, and you just saw him with the torch at Bell Center earlier this week. Well, we're going to bring in Jake Bolenmoss of Coolbet shortly, but first,
Do you want to get to this MLB news?
Oh, sure. You want to get to MLB? Sure. MLB. We'll switch gears here. MLB. They're the CBA expiring December 31, beginning talks. They want to avoid a lockout. Revenues high, interest high, pitch clock been very successful. But I think a salary cap seems to be a big issue for the owners, and the players are saying, hey, we want more revenue sharing and want the salary floor raised.
Yes, exactly. So let me find this. Jesse Rogers, ESPN, reporting that MLB proposed a hard salary cap to union officials today as a part of the next CBA. Sources tell ESPN, as it says. The salary floor for teams beginning in 2027 would be set at $171 million, which includes player benefits, and the ceiling would be set at $245 million, which, Remo, there are, let me count this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams in 2026 ahead of that $240 million ceiling. So those teams would have to shed cap. Obviously, those teams, the Blue Jays, the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, the big spenders, the Phillies are in there. And there are even more teams below the proposed floor, like Miami, Cleveland, Chicago, Washington. The list goes on. There's a number of teams below that proposed floor. And I know a lot of thoughts on the MLB. The salary cap, a lot of people want a cap floor because you have the bottom 10 teams in the league in terms of payroll, just not spending money. They don't spend money on their players. They trade them all away. And guess where they all go? The Dodgers. And that's where the salary cap ceiling comes in. And people think, the Dodgers are spending all of this money, throwing billions of deferred money to Ohtani and Kyle Tucker and Mookie Betts and everyone that they've signed. So then that's where the ceiling comes into play. So I don't know. That seems like a very short window, a tight window of $171 million floor, but a $245 million ceiling, which, again, there are a number of teams above that and below that for this year in 2026, let alone next year when more money is going to be spent in free agency and all that stuff. So I know a lot of people are on edge for an MLB lockout. Not sure if these numbers are helping. I don't know if that's going in the right direction for where the MLB wants to go, if they do want to institute a cap.
Yeah, and you see teams like Miami, Cleveland, White Sox, Washington, Athletics, spending, Pirates, Twins, spending so little money, pocketing revenue sharing dollars, not spending it on players. And you see that disparity, and the players want to have, more revenue sharing, and a salary floor, I think, is a bigger deal here than the cap, because I don't think the players are going to ever agree to a cap. And for those of you out there who think, hey, they need a salary cap, we need some parity, how about this, Connor? Between 2005 and 2025, there's been 13 different World Series champions. And how many different Stanley Cup champions have we had in that 20-year period?
Oh, boy. Am I supposed to guess?
Well, I'll tell you.
So 2005, Florida's won a couple. Tampa Bay's won a couple. Chicago, LA. Let me say 8.
No. It's 14.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
So we've had the same.
Oh, wait. No. That's not. Okay, wait. Sorry. I asked ChatGPT. This is wrong.
And it's wrong. Yeah.
This has the Canadians and Devils as well. No, this is the stupid.
Yeah, no,
I
have not.
Scratch that out. I don't know what the heck this is. Don't trust AI for everything. I'm trying to take notes on this, but I'm pretty sure it's not like the NHL has had so many more different Stanley Cup winners than baseball. I've done it before manually. And as you said, you've had Blackhawks winning 3. You've had the Kings. You've had Tampa. You've had Pittsburgh. You've had Florida. And again, the World Series, you have had a number of different winners, like the Rangers, like the Giants, Braves in there, Nationals. So I don't think it's like some guarantee said, hey, when you have a salary cap, you're going to get different winners. You're seeing it in the NHL. You're seeing it in football as well, Connor, with a number of repeat winners. But holy AI. I mean, I'm like, who's won the Stanley Cup between 2005 and 2025? And they've got the Canadians on this list. What the H? What are we doing?
Maybe they're predicting, 2025.
What are we doing
predicting
here?
A major comeback and win this year. No,
what are we doing here?
Wrong.
What are we doing here? Anyways, one guy back in the continent, back in Canada after the big trip overseas, Jake Bullen-Moss of Coolbet. Jake, pumped to have you back on the show. It's been a while. We have to ask the question everyone's wondering. Are you engaged after the big trip? Jake, everyone wants to know.
I'm not engaged. Huss put a lot of pressure on that aspect. It was not planned engagement. We're not engaged. Still some time for that whole storyline to play out. But no, as of right now, I'm just a well-traveled man. Everything's still good though. Great trip with the girlfriend, and I'm sure we'll go on another one here soon.
Remis holding his feet to the fire there, coming in hot.
So, we're all wondering.
That's 101.
Huss started it.
You're like going on a big trip to Europe with a girlfriend, and Hustler's like, oh, really?
Oh,
so that was the last time you were on. We needed the update, but I mean, what's your thoughts been watching the Stanley Cup playoffs? Another final featuring the Vegas Golden Knights, and this time led in points by former Maple Leaf Mitch Marner.
Yeah. I mean, listen, what a life to be a Vegas sports fan, right? Like 9 years ago, you didn't have a hockey team and you've been to the Cup final for 3 times now. You've won a Stanley Cup. We're sitting here as Winnipeg fans, as Toronto fans, like, when is it going to be our turn? And this team just does it every few years. So, obviously it's a little frustrating. Having Marner go there, but they're a good hockey team, man. They were good before Marner got there. So, I'm not going to discredit what he's done these playoffs. It's been very impressive. He didn't do that with Toronto. You can go back and look at the stats. Like, I'm not just saying that as a sour Leaf fan. I mean, maybe I am a sour Leaf fan. I'm not rooting for him. I'll tell you that much. You can't discredit what they've done. And, the fact that they fired Cassidy with 8 games to go in the season, flipped it to Torts, and they've gone on this run, sweeping the Colorado Avalanche in the Western Conference Finals. It's really impressive. And, I'm a Carolina Hurricanes fan for the rest of the way, I think. So,
yeah, I think here in Winnipeg, if it comes down to Carolina versus Vegas, big time. Go Carolina. Let's get into the odds. Assuming, Carolina wins, you can look at Coolbet right now. The Stanley Cup champion odds, Carolina is a favorite, and they haven't even closed out their 3rd round series yet. What will you be watching for in this Game 5 as Carolina looks to close it out? And then when the Stanley Cup finals get going, when those markets release on Coolbet?
Yeah, I had a good watch of last night's game, and Carolina is suffocating, man. They play a brand of hockey that, for a long time it got them to an Eastern Conference final almost every year, and then they really struggled from that point on. But they played some tough teams in that Eastern Conference final. I think you're starting to see the difference when you play, a Florida to this Montreal team that really can't generate a lot of shots, was what we've seen. That's the big storyline around, the last couple series for Montreal, is they don't get a whole lot of shots on goal, and they're just suffocating. Like, they're all over you. You watch when they're in the O-zone and there's a 50-50 puck, going out to the blue line, they're deep pinching every single time. They keep the pressure on you steady. They scored those 3 goals in the blink of an eye last night, and it was basically over. Like, I had one of my Montreal Canadiens buddies just say, that team just quit last night. It was like they just accepted defeat in that one, and then, you'll see what happens. But it's a tough one for Montreal now. You lose both games at home in the Bell Center, which they've struggled in, the entire postseason, which is surprising for an arena that's, I'd argue, the best one going in the playoffs, year in and year out when they're in it. But yeah, you got to go back to Carolina now, down 3-1. I don't know. If you're Montreal, I think you're just hoping to get one back here, get it back to the Bell Center if you can. if you're Carolina, you want to get this series over as quickly as possible. I think they said if they do wrap it up in 5, the Stanley Cup playoffs would start on Tuesday. So, we could have a quick turnaround. We could have the Stanley Cup finals, I should say, here going very shortly. But I have a hard time seeing Montreal making the 3-1 comeback. No offense to them. I just think Carolina has kind of weathered it for many, many years, and they're finally going to get over the hump here and see what they have against Vegas in the finals.
Yeah, they did put out the release that the Stanley Cup final would begin June 2nd. If it goes in 5, June 4. Otherwise, I think we're ready to get this thing winding down. And looking at the numbers for tomorrow's game, Jake, Carolina, massive favorite at home, minus 230. And I said this to Pat yesterday. I was surprised that they're favored over Vegas at this point in terms of cup winner. Carolina minus 143. And Vegas, they were plus 100 yesterday. They're plus 120 now, which actually seems like kind of decent value considering the way they've played and this rest here.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Remo. I think there's some great value on Vegas right now, considering they're already into the final. They don't have to beat anyone else. They're there. So, as much as I think we all expect Carolina to kind of make the move into the final, they haven't quite made it there yet. They still got to play another game. You don't know what could happen in game 5. It's the playoffs. Anything can happen, injuries, whatever. We don't root for stuff like that, but that's just the reality of what the NHL is in the Stanley Cup. I think it's great value there, plus 120 on Vegas. It's funny, I know they were going on overdrive yesterday, just kind of talking about, when you look at who's the best player in a Vegas Carolina series, you probably argue Jack Eichel, you can argue Mitch Marner if you'd like. Like I said, I'm not trying to discredit what Mitch has done. It's very impressive, but Eichel's done. Eichel's won a cup. Mitch has joined this team, right? Stone, another great player. Doesn't necessarily light it up on the score sheet, although he had a really nice year. But the guy kind of does it all. I think you'd say a few Vegas guys probably before you got to, an Aho or Jarvis maybe. I think they have a lot of under the radar guys on Carolina, but the way they play the game is it's a really team style, and that's how they get a lot of their wins. They've been impressive for many years now, and it looks like they're finally going to get over the hump and into the final. But yeah, back to your original question, Remo, I think there's some great value on Vegas at that plus 120 number. I don't think it's to me, it's going to be a pick 'em if it's Carolina Vegas. I don't see it being a huge difference one way or the other, considering how both these teams got there.
Let's move on to baseball. The Blue Jays have only lost 2 series since April 20th, and both have been to the Rays. So they've been playing some pretty good baseball despite all the injuries. They beat the Marlins yesterday. That's another series win. Tonight they start a 4-game road series in Baltimore. What have you thought of the Blue Jays stretch since April 20th outside of the 2 Rays series? And do you think they can maybe start getting on a roll here starting in Baltimore tonight?
Yeah, obviously it was tough to watch while I was away, but obviously I've been keeping up and keeping an eye on the team. And then when I'm home, I'm watching pretty steady. So the Blue Jays, they're finding ways to get it done. They're getting really good pitching, even from, not their big guys in the Gosmans. Cease just hit the injured list, which is no good. But they got New Savage back. He's pitched really well here in his early going. Patrick Corbin's been a nice piece. They picked up Connor Hrabchak in a trade yesterday. I think he's joined the team now, so he'll likely come in and give them some bulk innings here while they, work Shane Bieber back. And obviously Cease, you're hoping that's not going to take too long for him to get back as well. I think they're just finding ways to win. Another thing, I was listening to Overdrive and they were talking about Ernie, and it was early in the season. They were shooting some golf video or something like that, and Ernie's like, "Listen, guys, there's 112 games left. There's still a lot of season left. They're only 2 games under 500. I think at this point last year they had 27 wins. So everyone kind of just listen. I don't think this year is last year. I think every year in the MLB is a little bit different. But let's not just give up on the summer just yet in the boys in blue. I think there's plenty of season left to go here. I think they're going to find it. We need Vladdy getting a little bit more power, but they just called up It's McAdoo, Charles McAdoo. It was a big prospect in the system. It sounds like he's got some big power, so look for that. I don't know if he's going to be in the lineup tonight. I haven't seen a card just yet, but they posted a few times about him. Some big power. I think they're looking for more pop in this lineup. Like, I think, guys like Jesus Sanchez and Pinongo, I think they want them swinging the bat hard. I think they want to get Vladdy going, so we'll see. Okamoto hit a huge home run yesterday to win that game and a tight one, 2-1, and some really good defense yesterday as well. I think we'll just, got to see what the lineup looks like night to night. Hopefully they get some more power going. They can find a way to win this series. Like a 3-1 series win over the Orioles this weekend would go a long way to kind of the rest of the year here and spark the boys as the Dome opened up this past week. That's kind of the big story of the week is the Dome is back open. So once they're back home, I'm sure we'll see plenty of open air games at the Rogers Center.
Yeah, I saw Kevin Gaussman tweeting open the Dome, and it was this time, it was like Canada Day last year where they had that series with the Yankees where the weather's heating up and the team's heating up, and people started getting excited, and maybe we'll be seeing that with the Jays as they battle all these injuries. I see Vlad back in the lineup yesterday, bit of a scare, hit by pitch, but he had the slow start. You'd like to see some more big hits from him. On the hard court, this West final, very exciting. OKC and the Spurs. San Antonio, 4-point favorite tonight at home. One of these teams will be going to play the Knicks. The Thunder, though, can win tonight. They're leading the series 3-2. Do we get a Game 7?
I mean, listen, the series has been as advertised, so I think for fans of sport, I think we deserve a Game 7 here, especially, the way kind of the NHL Western Conference Final went with the sweep over Colorado. The East Final now is starting to look like it's probably going to be Carolina in 5, barring a crazy change tomorrow night. I think we deserve a Game 7 as sports fans. So hopefully this series can deliver one more time. The Spurs can find a way to get it done. Maybe they cover that 4 as well if you're a betting man or woman. I'm really hoping for a Game 7 just to give us a little bit more drama in the NBA or in the playoffs, in general, because kind of just looking around, you're like, well, the Knicks have moved on. The Knights have moved on. The Hurricanes are 1 game away from moving on with a home game tomorrow night. Please just let the Spurs win tonight. Give us a Game 7 against the Thunder. I think people are kind of getting sick and tired of the Thunder, too. I don't know if you guys have been seeing the discourse online, but people are really unhappy with SGA and kind of the way the Thunder play the game. And, the refs are getting a little better with the way they're calling the games, but there's still too much of that just falling over on every single play that's going on. And it's frustrating basketball to watch. So I understand where people are coming from. I'm hoping we do get a Game 7 and, it comes down to hopefully like a tight whistle, hopefully it doesn't come down to foul shots at the end of a Game 7.
Jake, as we wind it down, anything else on CoolBet that's on your betting card this weekend? I see Vicky and Boko in action right now at Roland Garros, Memorial Cup, some NHL draft futures. If you think McKenna's going number 1 to the Leafs, currently minus 714 as Stenberg's impressing at the Worlds. And as you mentioned, the Worlds, Canada moving on to the semifinal. But anything else you got your eye on before we wind this down?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Remo, you cover a lot of it. Obviously we had the Worlds today with Canada beating the U.S. That was nice. I know it's not the Olympics, but I think anytime we get the opportunity to beat the U.S., we take advantage. Besides that, I don't know. I would say, Memorial Cup wrapping up this weekend. I think the Kitchener Rangers are already sitting there in the final, waiting for the semifinal on who's going to win there. And CFL starting next week. And we got a little surprise for the WST CFL 110 fans that I'll tease here. The pools we've been running, these free-to-play pools on CoolBet that we have been running for the golf, and we did run one with our partner for some hockey. We are going to run one for the CFL. I prepped it today. I've got it all ready to go, and it's going to be basically a a weekly pick'em contest. So you guess the score in each of the games in the CFL every week. You get points based on, how accurate you are in betting and picking these scores. And then at the end of the regular season, we're actually going to give away the number one player in the tournament. We're going to give away a trip to the 113th Grey Cup. So that will start up next week. We'll chat with, I'll email you guys all the details and we can get that pushed out to the people. But it's going to be a CFL Pick'em League running for all 21 weeks. We'll do like a $50 bonus as a weekly prize. And then the grand prize at the end, build up all the points, is going to be a trip to the 113th Grey Cup.
Wow. Sounds amazing.
Nice.
Can't wait to get that going. Pumped for CFL. We do have the Bombers' final preseason game tomorrow at Princess Auto Stadium. Jake, great having you on, and looking forward to having you and Huss back together next week. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, boys. I'll send you that info, and we'll get to pushing that contest next week.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch. I can't wait to get my picks in for that one. CFL, finally here. There he is, Jake Bowen-Moss with Coolbet. And Connor, just as Jake mentioned CFL, we do have our Chuds Power Sports Power Poll. We're going to do a blind power poll. I'm going to quiz you right now. I've got 5 teams. You need to rank them in terms
1 through 5.
1 through 5.
Okay.
How are they among the top 5? All right, here we go. Let's rank them. Number 1, Montreal Alouettes. Where are you ranking them on your preseason power poll?
It's 1 or 2. I'll put them at 2. I think there are some teams that I would put ahead of them, but not many. So I'm going to put them at 2 off the top.
Davis Alexander, all eyes on his hamstring as we start the season. Got taken out precautionary.
His hamstring, right?
We saw him in the Grey Cup hobbling around. We know how good he can be, but health, he's been battling health. So we'll put Montreal number 2.
I've heard
1.
just about enough of his hamstring these days. But
Hey, I like. He's a good player. I mean, I know people don't like him. I think he's a good player, good for fantasy. Hamilton, where are you putting Hamilton?
Oh man, I want to put them 3, but I'm scared. I'll put there's just such a tier gap in the CFL. I might get burned for this, but I'll put them 4. We'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. I might be managing this poorly, but 4.
Saskatchewan, the Grey Cup champions. You're putting the Grey Cup champions.
They're number 1.
They've lost talent.
Yeah, they've lost talent. I think Tait brought up a good point earlier. Like Corey Mace, they have a great organization. They're going to backfill the players they lost well. They deserve to be number 1. They won the Grey Cup. Put them at 1. Yeah.
Okay. The BC Lions. Where are you putting BC?
They're at 3. I think they're better than Hamilton, worse than Saskatchewan and Montreal. Yeah.
Okay, so number BC. 5, you have the Bombers at number 5 on your Jets Power Sports Power Poll. How are you feeling about this power poll?
I'd flip Hamilton and Winnipeg. I think I was scared that, an Edmonton would pop up or a Ottawa or, I was scared one of those teams would pop up and then I'd get burned by having to put them, 1 or 2 or 3. But yeah, I'd flip Hamilton and Winnipeg on my own personal and Winnipeg BC too. I could be talked into those as well. But yeah, what do you think?
I just did the top 5 5 teams. I didn't mess around by throwing in Edmonton. I guess I could have.
It was the element of fear that Ottawa would pop up and all I'd have left is number 1.
I could have been we'll see. The Bombers, I do find it interesting. The Bombers, you look at Coolbet, Grey Cup winner. They got the 3rd best odds to win the Cup, but you think they're the 5th best team in the league, Connor. Bit of a discrepancy there. I think part of it is the division that they're in. I mean, BC, we know how good they are with Nathan Rourke. Saskatchewan, defending champions. It is, as you talk with Ed, very tough in the West. I think you could put them in any order. You're not going to be wrong. I think it's a bit of an easier path in the East. Toronto, who knows what you're going to get from them. Ottawa, with Jake Mayer starting the season at quarterback. I think it's going to be tough to have success there. We'll see how it plays out. So Hamilton, they're in a really good spot. They got Kenny Lawler and Bo. We'll see. But the defense, giving up a lot of points as well. But I think this is fine. You can make any argument. It's preseason. The Bombers only went 10-8 last year. So if you want to base it on, hey, this is where they were last year, we're not ranking, this year. This is okay. This is okay.
Yeah, Teal and Waiters are on my case in chat, but that's okay. I can handle the heat. I get it. Saskatchewan being number 1 by week 5, this is purely a respect thing, putting them number 1 because they're the reigning Grey Cup champs, and I'll keep them at number 1 for now. But again, in my own personal power pool, if I didn't have the fear of Edmonton popping up, I probably would have Winnipeg 3 or 4 with BC, Hamilton 5 here, and then BC the other one. But Saskatchewan and Montreal was the Grey Cup last year. Out of respect, keep them 1 and 2.
Would love to see Nathan Rourke get a Grey Cup. He's a great player, great to watch, but not at the expense of the blue and gold, who are trying to get back there after missing this past season. In Saskatchewan, interestingly enough, they don't play week 1. They open up at home week 2, hosting BC and the Bombers in Calgary next Friday, and then their home opener Thursday, June 11 at 7:30 against Hamilton will be covered by Marshall Ferguson, who we had on the show yesterday. So check that out if you missed that conversation. Connor, it's been a great show today. We talked about the playoffs. There won't be a game to wrap up tomorrow. We got the off night tonight. I'm not sure if you got big plans. You watching this NBA game then?
Yes, I will be watching the NBA game, OKC San Antonio. Some of the best basketball I think I've ever watched. I've been watching the NBA a long time. And man, these two teams are awesome. So much fun to watch. Wemby is so much fun to watch. So I'll be watching that. The Jays start early tonight, I believe at 5:30. So I'll be watching the Jays as well, have them on a screen. And maybe get outside at some point and enjoy this beautiful weather. I've got nice, outdoor plans over the weekend, but I mean, the weather's so nice today that might work something in, Remo. What about you?
Got my son's soccer. It's going to be a hot one, and maybe catch up on some shows or something. Watch a little baseball, fold my laundry. Always laundry to be folded.
Always.
Connor, always laundry to be folded. But anyways, it's been a great show. Shout out to our guests, Ed Tait, Brandon Rewucki, JBM for just joining us, and shout out to the sponsors. Without them, would not be here doing this today. Tri-Hospital Dream Lottery, Clean Line, Manitoba Battery, Rolly's Transfer, Princess Auto, Chud's Power Sports, St. Vital Dental, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, Winnipeg Gold Eyes, Travel Manitoba, Assiniboia Downs, Aikens Lake, Breezy Bend, Little Brown Jug, and Cool Bet. For Connor Hrabchak, I'm Michael Remis. This has been another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.